All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's what it looked like from afar as two police officers were shot in Ferguson yesterday. Joining us now on the, or last night, joining us now on the Malzberg panel is the one and only senior partner and owner of law offices of Adam M. Thompson. He's also a syndicated talk show host, Adam M. Thompson. And in this corner, Brad Hirschfield, author of You Don't Have to Be Wrong for Me to Be Right, and president of CLAL. All right, gentlemen, you know, the Attorney General of the United States weighed in and denounced this heinous act, as he put it, and said basically that the shooter or shooters were trying to, cause tension, in effect, between the police and the protesters. And I got to tell you, Brad, I disagree. They were trying to kill the cops. And there are many who say that people like Al Sharpton and also the Attorney General, and some say the President, have created a climate that makes this more likely to happen.
So, Steve, I think both can be true. It can be an attempt to inject tension, because that's what terrorists always do. And to my mind, this was an act of terrorism in addition to being an act of attempted murder. And I think it's clear it was an act of attempted murder. So I think both are true. I think imagining who's contributed to that makes a fundamental mistake, because whatever errors people think have been made by the administration, either the President or a Holder, and I really would put Reverend Al in a very different category, a much less responsible category than the first two.
You mean more responsible? You said less.
Oh, I apologize.
Yeah.
No, he behaves less responsibly.
Oh, less responsible.
He's not. I don't take him as a serious, responsible actor.
Yeah.
So it's a whole different deal.
Okay.
I think none of that actually matters. One thing matters right now. Someone tried to murder two police officers, and what all police officers will tell us is that if you're willing to shoot a cop, you're willing to do anything, which means that even if you have any modicum of sympathy for the shooter, just remember, you get on their wrong side, you could be next.
Yeah, but Adam, here's the thing, and here's why I disagree with Brad, because I think it does matter. You know, you have three, Bernie Carrick told us at the top of the show, 3 murdered black police officers so far this year. I haven't heard Al Sharpton say anything about that. But also, I think a climate has been created. I think since Ferguson, we have had a situation in this country. We had the execution in Brooklyn of the police officers. We've had a hatchet attack on police officers. We've had cops shot elsewhere. And I think that the way the Attorney General and the President have branded Ferguson and handled the whole case, even Trayvon Martin to an extent. I'm not saying they're responsible for the shooting. I'm saying they're responsible for the climate, which contributes to people saying, hey, maybe I should off those pigs, which is what they had scrawled on the ground outside the police station yesterday, by the way, also. Pigs die.
This is a very disappointing situation, because this is where really all groups can come together in unity. There should be no type of argument or debate that police officers in Ferguson that were involved or demonstrating any kind of racial component be discharged from their jobs. When the Department of Justice finding came down saying that there was a pattern and practice of racial inequality in how the police force handled and investigated matters and arrested people and prosecuted people, they sent a strong message, and now the framework was in place to change that climate. So the police chief was gone. Various police officers started getting terminated or resigned. Even people working in the court system were forced to resign. And that sent a hopeful message that things were going to change for the better, things that everyone can unite and get together behind. Now we have another situation, police are getting killed. There shouldn't be a person at all anywhere that is in favor of police getting shot, or even offering an excuse that, well, tensions were rough here and things were difficult.
All right.
So maybe...
Okay, but Adam, the problem is that we had people marching through the streets of New York, unruly, allowed by the mayor of New York to march wherever they want, shouting whatever, death to cops, kill the cops, something like that. So that's the problem.
That needs to be condemned.
What's that?
That needs to be condemned, and leaders have to speak out about that.
Yeah, and Brad, I think also in 30 seconds we need to put harsher restrictions on the protesters. They shouldn't be allowed to roam the streets of the cities of this country.
I do think there's responsible protest and irresponsible protest. Here's the one pragmatic thing I'd like to see. I'd like to see the people who are protesting against the police now show up in force in favor, not of the whole police force, but of how unacceptable it is to do violence to the cops in your community.
Part 2 of the panel is next. Don't go away. All right, folks, we're back, part two of the Malzberg panel, and we're rejoined by Adam M. Thompson and by Brad Hirschfield. I had Dana Milbank on just a few minutes ago, and he wrote a piece talking about the 47 senators, the Republicans who sent the letter to Iran. Of course, the Daily News called them traitors. You have Hillary basically calling them traitors by saying there were two reasons, either to help Iran or to undermine the president. Either one sounds like a traitor to me. So I asked him. I said, what about Nancy Pelosi going to Syria against the urging? I mean, George W. Bush said, don't go. She went there to negotiate by herself on behalf of the U.S. and Israel, by the way, and both countries had to denounce what she presented to the president of Syria. And if you go back, Ted Kennedy wrote a letter to the Soviet Union. We were in the middle of a Cold War, and he wrote a letter saying, if you help us, you shake things up a little to help us defeat Reagan in '84, we'll help you. And you had the Dear Commandante letter sent by 10 Democrats in the House, led by Jim Wright of Texas, the majority leader, to Noriega, because they disagreed with Reagan's policy towards Nicaragua. And he said there's really no comparison because of the sheer numbers on the current letter to Iran. Brad, I don't buy that.
So I think before we get to the analogy, can we go back to that language of traitors? That is so wrong, it's not even wrong. Treason's a very serious crime.
I'm writing that down. So wrong, it's not wrong.
It's not even wrong. It's
okay.
Outrageous.
Yeah.
It's completely outrageous.
Yeah.
I happen not to agree with what they did, but to call that treason is really perverse. Now, I think there are ways, Steve, you're right, they can be analogized, but ultimately they're very, very different, and here's why. Because in all of those other cases, there was no possibility of a practical change in what we wanted to do. So what you had was Democrats behaving badly. What you have here...
If Ted Kennedy got the Soviets, whispering in their ear, hey, you cause a little ruckus here, and you'll be enough to get Reagan out of office...
But that's ultimately up to the American voter. That's up to us. The problem here is that it's going to be hard enough, and I would say probably impossible, to get a decent deal with Iran. By sending this letter, what I think these very well-intentioned, and I think it was well-intentioned, senators did, was they gave the Iranians an out. Because now they can say, we don't have to bargain seriously with you, because you're not going to make the deal anyway.
Well, but our own Secretary of State, Adam, testified before Congress yesterday and said it's not legally binding. That's why the Senate has no role in it, because it's not a legal document. So what kind of cockamamie agreement is this anyway?
Netanyahu called it when he spoke before Congress and said, plain and simple, it's a bad deal. It's ridiculous that we even having a conversation about Iran entering into any deal or agreement that they would follow or adhere to anyway. They even misrepresented where they even have nuclear plants set up, that we discovered there were many hidden in areas they said never existed. So dealing with a group of individuals you can't trust from the get-go makes this just a preposterous situation. But I think too much of this is politicized. That's what the problem is. I have no problems with senators speaking their mind, whether they agree or disagree with what the president is doing, because they have a right to voice their concerns and speak on behalf of their constituents. And I think many people think this deal with Iran is terrible, and we didn't need the Israeli prime minister to come here and say that. We should have known that on our own.
Adam, very quickly, you're a lawyer. You know of any law, we got less than a minute, I want to get the Brad in too. You know of any law that would have prohibited Hillary from having multiple email accounts on one phone?
Not off the top of my head, but I know within the federal government there's a lot of restrictions. So I know as an elected public official, she was supposed to have an official email where anything that she does or transact business has to be monitored.
Right.
So
I understand that. Two separate...
Right.
But Lanny Davis, who worked in the White House, couldn't tell me why she couldn't have 2 accounts or 3 accounts on one phone. Do you know of any reason, Brad?
Yeah, I can give you one very good reason. Because she thinks the rules don't apply to her.
Well,
and that's what this is really about.
Absolutely.
I don't care if it was illegal. She knew what the regs were, and she violated them because she really doesn't believe the rules apply to her.
And she was supposed to, upon leaving the State Department, she had to sign a document, which if she signed it, according to what I saw on Megyn Kelly's show yesterday, she could be in legal trouble, so much so that there could be a prison sentence if she were anybody else. But that's yet to be determined. Brad and Adam, thank you very much. Gimme 5 is next.